Hi there, and welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, a psychology student and internationally best-selling author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news and tons of fascinating psychology topics each week. If you want to learn more about psychology, then please check out my books and the backlist of the podcast at connorwiley.net/podcast. And please make sure you subscribe to the channel and you like it so that you don't miss any new videos. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 188 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on why our career in psychology is important to investigate. And it is the 21st of January 2023 as I record this. So the reason why I actually wanted to do today's episode was because when it comes to careers in psychology and the psychology job market, tons of parents and quite a lot of young people believe that psychology is useless because they don't see what job they can get at the end of it. This is such a critical area to understand, just so we as people who love psychology actually know what we can work towards, and we can be made aware of the pathways to get to the jobs that we want. But it's also important to help raise awareness, just so parents, teachers, and other people don't discourage younger people from investigating a psychology career just because of unfounded, untrue myths. So we're moving on to the psychology news section, within from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. So the first one is, giving a gift can make you feel less lonely. Giving a gift or sending a note of appreciation is known to boost the mood and well-being of the giver, not just the receiver. Now a new paper finds that these kinds of pro-social acts can even reduce feelings of loneliness as well. This is significant because interventions aimed at reducing loneliness have so far only had limited success. And yeah, that is completely true, because loneliness, as much as we try to raise awareness, as much as we try to do something about it, personally, I just never think we seem to get very far with it. Yes, and whilst the problem with this idea of that the lonely person has to do something, as bad as that sort of sounds in the sense that we're putting the onus on the lonely person, and I suppose that some people could say that, well, we're lonely victim blaming, or we're blaming the lonely person. But this is a very simple act that all of us can actually do, though. So, yes, if you're ever feeling lonely, or if you know that a particular family member is lonely themselves, then maybe just text them, give them a small gift, and basically just do something quite simple about it. For example, after this, because I've not seen my grandparents for a week, I might just text them to see how they are, for example. So it's all about these small, simple acts can actually have massive impacts. So the second one is how film editing influences our perception of time. Filmmakers have long used editing techniques to influence the viewing experience. The Carlick show effect is a classic example. In the 1920s, Russian filmmaker Lev Lunkshov, sorry if I've completely butchered that, found that by varying the content of an image that followed one of the character's faces, he could alter inferences about what was going on in that character's mind. It turns out that editing techniques can also influence the perceptions of a party over time. Recent paper finds film clips feel longer if editing is used to maintain a sense of continuity rather than break up the action, perhaps because this kind of editing requires a greater cognitive processing on the part of the viewer. So whilst I'm not that versed in the sort of cognitive psychology of the perception of a time and like that sort of like stuff, I do want to make a larger point about this, is that there are tons of different like psychological tricks, so whether writers, filmmakers, and tons of other artists use to actually make us perceive stuff. Yeah, for example, I'm actually doing a pacing course at the moment, and that's about how the book feels to the reader. And really high skilled writers basically perform mind control on the reader because they use tons of the different like techniques that make viewers feel like a certain way. It's all really clever, it's all really fascinating to learn about. Yes, whilst there's nothing psychological I can say about this, it's quite interesting how over the decades, over the centuries, that we've actually picked up on these different techniques to help us make somebody feel a certain way at a specific moment in time. Okay then, and it turns out that that was the last psychology news section. So, I hope you enjoyed this section. So, let's move on to the personal update. So, we're moving on to the personal update. It's great to be back at our university and really starting to actually get back into the flow of it because this week, so it was my first week back at university, and this term's actually looking really great because I've only actually got 2 modules, 2 lectures, and then the rest of my time is basically filled with my dissertation. So the dissertation, we're going on for 2 more weeks with our experiment, and that should be great. It'd be really good to see the girl that I'm working with again, seeing people and just collecting a bit more data. So that will be great. But I think basically every single university student all over the world can actually agree with me here that the first week back is always a little dull because you've got the introductory talks where the lecturers, as much as they're passionate about the topic, no one can make an introductory talk interesting. I'm sorry, I've been to quite a few now and just no, because there's just no way to talk interestingly about learning outcomes, what they want you to achieve, assessment criteria, etc., etc. So I really do feel for the lecturers, and yeah, because I had a 4 to 6 on Fridays, so of course that's always gonna be a bad lecture. Yeah, well, in terms of attendance, and half the people left during the break there, which was a shame because I think they still should have stayed because it was an introduction to clinical psychology, and because this is a second year module, but third years are allowed to take it because of what we were promised back in our first year. Yeah, well, like, there was tons of people who actually haven't done like clinical psychology before, so it would have been like useful like for them. But anyway, so although like this week has been a lot of like psychology stuff and trying to get back into the swing of university, but next week I am looking forward to actually getting back to the lab and finishing up our data collection. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connor@whiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connor.whiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Careers in Psychology, a brand new book that was released yesterday as I record this. So, Careers in Psychology is an absolute must-have for any psychology students, psychology professionals, and anyone interested in psychology, because the fascinating thing about this book that I was quite shocked about is a psychology degree gives you so much, so many opportunities from all different paths, from business, clinical, forensic, cognitive, experimental. There's just so many different amazing paths with a psychology degree, and that passion, that interest really does come through in this book. So this is a perfect book for psychology students who aren't quite sure what they want to do with their degree, and even for people who are fairly sure what they actually want to do. I would still recommend getting the book a bit, simply because it does contain my own personal experience about working in academia for a bit, what the university politics is like, and there are tons of other tidbits of information that you might actually be quite surprised about. So if you want a great, really easy to understand and a fascinating book, then definitely check out Careers in Psychology. And a massive thank you for all the tons of people who have all really bought it. I didn't quite expect it to be this popular, but people are loving this book. So that is the Careers in Psychology, a guide to careers in clinical psychology, business psychology, forensic psychology, and more. At least I think that's the subtitle. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. And you can buy it directly from me at payhip.com/conwhitey, and buying books directly from authors just helps to support them more, because they get more of the money in sort of lining the pockets of big retailers. So now the personal update is done, let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about why are careers in psychology important to investigate. I love this topic, and this is just such a great podcast episode for January and the new year. But I do just want to say though, before we dive into an extract from the book, I've just forgot to mention that as always, nothing on the podcast is any sort of official advice. So none of this is official career advice or anything. This is just me sharing information. This is not advice whatsoever. Right now, I'm just going to read you an extract from my Careers in Psychology book. And from what I remember, I think this is the second chapter. As much as I and everyone else reading this book probably wants to get on to the good bits about careers in psychology, it is critical that we actually focus on why it's important to look at. Since everyone reading this book probably does psychology in one form or another, and I can promise you that we all have certain areas of psychology that we aren't very keen on. For me, it's a business psychology because it flat out doesn't interest me. For you, it might be a social or biological or cognitive psychology. Yet, the thing that helps us to get through these difficult areas is the fact that we know why it's important. The reason tends to be as simple as knowing we need the information for exams, but it still helps us to focus. Therefore, that's why this chapter is needed. So in that case you find a chapter that you want to be interested in later on, then you know why it's still good to read. I now know from writing this book that some career options that can really take you by surprise, and that's definitely true. The most important reason. As you'll see throughout the book, knowing where you want to go in psychology is critical from an early start, because if you know where you want to go, then you can aim for it, make decisions that will help you get there, and do the requirements that the particular career route requires. For example, if you wanted to do clinical psychology in the future, forgetting how massive all areas of psychology are, then it's a good idea to start taking clinical psychology modules in your undergraduate degree, so you can start to show extra interest and start learning more about your future career. Therefore, if you learn about career options sooner rather than later, then this can give you a great goal to aim for when it comes to making decisions about your degree and modules. Personally, this is what I did with my undergraduate degree, because I knew I wanted to work in clinical psychology in the future, leading me to find a degree with clinical psychology modules, and I went from there. In fact, I managed to find a degree that was a lot more specialised in that clinical psychology than a normal psychology degree, due to my undergraduate degree has a lot of complementary clinical psychology modules than non-specialised psychology degrees. Overall, because I made a decision about my future career early, it really did help me understand the type of courses, extra things, and experiences that I needed to do in order to improve my employability skills. Don't worry, we will talk about a lot more things in this book, so please rest assured all of these things are mentioned in the past two graphs above will be made clear to you. Massive overlap. This is definitely something that I realised after writing a lot of the book, because there is a massive amount of material in the book that overlaps with each other. For example, you might be reading a chapter on careers in academia, and there's a paragraph or two where that applies to careers in business or clinical psychology. I was rather surprised at how much content overlapped and helps to reinforce or re-explain what was mentioned in other chapters. As well as I wrote the book out, I too found it very helpful, since this overlapping content provided a fresh perspective on that information. My point is, don't skip a chapter of this book. You might hate the idea of working in academia, me too, but I would still read it for two reasons. Firstly, you'll probably find some minor overlapping in information that might help you understand something you've read in another chapter. Secondly, it will give you more awareness about what is actually possible with your psychology degree. As well as this might not be useful straight away, it might be in the future, especially if you go into one degree, find out you hate it, and then you remember another career you read about, and you might like the sound of it. Basically, please give yourself options, and believe me, with a psychology degree, those are hardly in short supply. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and the entire reason about why I wanted to read out that particular chapter is that just so even if you don't want to read careers in psychology, then just so you will know that looking into psychology careers is important regardless of the stage of your degree or your life that you're actually at though. So definitely check out psychology careers. If you want a really easy to understand book, then definitely check out careers in psychology. Available in all the usual places, and you can buy it directly from me at payhip.com/Connor Whiteley. And if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then definitely share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you still wanted to give the podcast a bit of one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it useful. If you want to learn more, then please go to connorwhiteley.net/podcast for the backlist and to check out my psychology books. Also, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel on YouTube or follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app, just so you don't miss any episodes that always appear every Monday. So, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.